Hello, all of our wonderful public. Welcome to Just Say Yes to No. My name is Joanne Dougan, and I am here today on February 20th, 2019, with my very new and dear friends, Rhiannon, Snyder, and Christopher Pagel, like bagel. It is not Pagel. It is not Pagel. It is not... It's just Pagel.
Despite popular telemarketer opinions, absolutely, just
exactly.
Pagel.
We did talk about how when you know that somebody calls on a telemarketer and they don't say your name, all you have to say is, no, there's no one by that name here.
No, he's busy toasting his morning Pagel.
Pagel, exactly.
Same can be said for Rhiannon. If you can't say my first name correctly, then, I don't know you.
Yeah, but there we go. Exactly. So, as is my want, I allow my guests to introduce themselves so that you can get a sense of who they are and how they would like you to first meet them. So let's start with you.
Thank you so much, first of all, for allowing us to come on here and share this time with you. My name is Rhiannon Snyder. I am known as the Director of Operations for Reliable Bud. I also am a distributor, and I work very heavily with Canaway and CBD. So I am an advocate within the cannabis industry and the CBD industry itself. I try to remain as up-to-date as possible on everything that's constantly changing in the industry. So that's where I'm at with the industry itself. And then me personally, I have a medical background. I come from the medical profession with about 7 years in cardiology and more years just in general in medical. And I was raised by my grandparents, have a great background. Can't wait to touch base about that stuff. But
Great.
I am real. I am a real human being, and I'm here to do what I can to push forward this industry.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Chris.
And
Mr. Pagel.
Well, hello. I am known as Christopher Pagel. Some people think my name is Pagel Christopher. It is not. I go by a lot of names in a lot of circles with a lot of nicknames, but just my last name being Pagel tends to stick out the most. I tell a lot of people, you'll meet a million Chris's, but I'll be the only Pagel you know. And if you know another, I'm the only one you need to know. So, it's been a wild ride here lately through the changes in the cannabis industry. Been a long time advocate of cannabis use. Got started with it when I was young, continued with it throughout my life, and that brought me over to Reliable Bud, where I am our visionary officer, helped start the company with some friends, and it's brought me here. It's very special place in my heart, primarily too because it introduced me to one of my best friends, if not my best friend, Rhiannon.
Best friends forever, partners in crimes. Actually, I would say this is my work husband. I'm his work wife.
It's true. It's true. Because we were all up in Vermont together, and I was with my legal husband, and you guys were together. But, we all traveled as, with the people that we were traveling with and so forth. Yeah,
Absolutely.
no. And the four of us, my husband and Chris and Rhiannon and I, had dinner together the night before the show that we were on, which was really lovely. And I really enjoyed that so much, to be able to really bring my husband into the RB fam, because that's part of what Reliable Bud, and we'll get into that a little bit, but really this is about introducing you and telling your backstories. One of the things, again, about Just Say Yes to No is it's very complicated to be a human being right now. And I think that for us to get real about the truth behind the word success and happiness, because that is what we're looking to achieve: excellent health, spreading truth, again, educating people. Well, what's that really like? Because it's not as if it's happy all the time. So let's go back to your childhoods and tell us a little bit, where were you guys born? And again, these are individual stories. They're co-workers. They're very, very good friends. They are amazing collaborators.
Thank you.
They are responsible and accountable and a joy to talk to and hang out with. So
Probably a little good at blushing, too. I don't know what's going on right now.
I don't know.
There's a lot of kind words.
So I want to know. So, Michael, can we see how fabulous the purple is in Chris's Mr. Pagel shirt? Can we? Good.
Yes, see how much redder we can get
see,
his
with
face
red and
too.
purple.
Yeah, so
I got to
it's a
tell
good
you,
look.
that's old lady power colors, okay? I don't usually go there because it's like, it's bad enough I wear clogs. I mean, and I'm not dyeing my hair, it's like you gotta pick your groups, and how well you want to represent them. In any case, purple and red, they are the power colors. In any case, so Rhiannon, you come from the other side of the country, and so tell us where you were born.
Actually, I was born down south, down in Texas, in the red state.
Oh.
Yes, my mother was active duty military. She was in the Army, and when she had me, so at that time she had a lot going on. My father and her had some issues. Actually, right after I was born, they went through a divorce. And so at that time, my mom had so much. My grandparents flew down from Washington State. They came down and got me, and they raised me themselves through the middle of 3rd grade for me. So I was raised up in Washington State by them. And, if I can say one thing to that, they taught me a lot because, it's kind of the old school way of thinking. And so I have from myself kind of termed and learned a lot as far as never do a job half-ass. And 15 minutes early is always on time. And this is all instilled to me because of my grandfather's way of thinking. So I was really blessed to have been raised as much as I was by them. And then after that, I transitioned to living with my mom, went to a private grade school, Catholic grade school, was bullied and picked on left and right for a couple years.
And where were you located at that point? Did your mom move to you, or did you move to your mom?
I moved to my mom in Spokane, Washington. So I was with her there and doing the private grade school with my sister. She's 3 years younger. And after going to that, I went into high school, which was a private Jesuit high school, and graduated from there. I loved high school, Gonzaga Preparatory School in Spokane, Washington. Shout out! Gotta love those guys. They taught me a lot. After that, I never went on to a 4-year university or anything. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field because I love helping people. I love making a difference. I'm a compassionate person really within the core of me. And so I went into the medical industry and became an ecotech. And I have been an ecotech for the past 7 years. And I really enjoyed what I did, working with the doctors and the patients and seeing the positive outcomes. Then I was introduced to the cannabis industry, and I got to see what the cannabis industry was and see the dynamic, the change from natural to synthesized medicine. And I was like, there's a huge difference to be seen here. Mm-hmm. So that's when the actual transition for me from medical to cannabis actually happened. So I went to a Women's Grow conference, saw all of the CBD and products that were available there, learned more, became very active, went in Reliable Bud, and started taking off that way. Now, before all this, I will say I was in a program, DARE, Drug Abuse Resistance Education. My grandpa was a Washington State Patrol officer, war on drugs. So I was raised very anti-cannabis and anti-drug in general. And so this right now actually does touch my family a little close. They wished it was jelly beans that I was working with, but I'm really doing my best to stay within that legal, transparent market and teach our community how to move forward in the right direction. So that's a little bit about my background and how I was raised, not so much an advocate, but then turned advocate recently.
So, so part of your story that's popped out for me is you have a younger sister. Mm-hmm. So she was born, and did she stay with your mom, or did she come? Was she raised by your grandparents as well?
Actually, I have 2 younger sisters. My middle sister, she was with my mom and her dad at the time, and my mom continued to be in the military, so she was active duty. She was gone for Desert Storm. She served her years, so thank you for your service, Mom, and everybody out there. Then she was again called to duty when 9/11 happened, and my second sister was born, Olivia, and she had to go to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and was gone for another 2 years, primordial years, my high school years and the 3rd and 4th years of my littlest sister's lives. So it was pretty difficult, but during that time we all stayed with the dad that we were with at the time, and it worked out. It was hard because our bond isn't quite as close as we'd wished it to be, but honestly, since kind of transferring into the cannabis industry from the medical industry, she's given me quite a bit of support and has been there for me, so I appreciate all of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So Chris, tell us about you. Where were you born?
Well, I'm born and raised in Coventry, Rhode Island, and so it's incredibly impressive that I don't live in the state of Rhode Island any longer. If you know anybody from there, they all pretty much stay there. Just getting out to Massachusetts meant I had to leave most of my friends and family behind because anything longer than a 30-minute drive is too far. But growing up around there was a good time. I came from a suburban neighborhood. I have 2 loving parents. I've got a sister that's 3 years younger than me that, although she drove me nuts when we were kids, I love her very much. And it was a family household in which my dad was our primary income. And he was an incredibly hard worker. He was constantly traveling, constantly working. When he would get out of work, he went to his office downstairs and continued work. It's actually where I got a lot of my work ethic from. I kind of have a tireless motor when it comes to getting a job done when it needs to be done. And I credit him a lot with that.
I'm going to attest to that. He does a fantastic job with his follow-through.
Thank you. And then my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom and part-time florist as well. During our early years, it was all home life. And I'll tell you, when it comes to entertaining, my mother, Donna Pagel, is like the best.
She's a blast.
She's
a blast.
She's fantastic.
And is she still down in Rhode Island?
No, they actually... They moved away too. They retired to Maine, which means that my dad is now a EMT, harbor master, volunteer firefighter, and works in a trauma center, and my mom works a full-time job at a bank. So they're retired.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. It sounds like they have a lot of time on their hands to, get in trouble, Chris.
You know
Sounds
it.
like everything's reversed.
Actually,
Wow, really?
they do get into a lot of trouble, though. They probably won't
Do
like
they?
me telling
Oh,
them
well, then
that,
don't.
but
Then
it's,
don't. Then no.
it's the fun kind of trouble, though.
Fun.
So it's
Fun.
okay. It's all good.
Donna, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful son. Really wonderful.
Thank you for saying that.
So no, really, and if she's no, really, I mean, and it's. I have to say, because I come from a very damaging family, and to sit here and to listen to you, which is much more, while your story is completely different, the level of pain and the confusion of what's really going on, who am I in this place, and how do I fit in, and everything else. I really relate to those themes, but I listen to your story, and it's like, wow, it was a pretty happy childhood. I mean, I'm sure you had your stressors, but, your home life, it sounds like you felt loved, supported, and that your parents were good role models for you.
That was definitely the case, at least in the early on years. I would gotta admit, me and my father, due to his strong work ethic and hard-headedness when it came to anything he set his mind to, during my teenage years, into young adulthood, those are some rough battles.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure it was
some
all
real
him.
rough times.
Yeah, it was all him.
Exactly.
Yeah. You weren't changing at all. No, you were just a teenager. You were probably a really easygoing person.
Exactly.
No hormones, no questions about, no deep questions.
I was definitely too smart for my own good as a kid.
Really?
I mean, I was actually, when I was in my young years, I was in those gifted programs and tested out of a ton of stuff. And I realized one day growing up, I'm like, wow, when you're in these programs and you're doing really well, what that means for you is they're just going to give you more homework. So I used the knowledge I had to purposely test out of that program and move on.
To dumb down?
Yeah,
Did you dumb down?
I did. I actually did. Because I had, like I said, I had a very loving family, very loving childhood and everything, but I also had a lot of chores. Lots of chores. I believe there was a quote one time that I didn't have kids to do yard work himself. So
yes, I understand.
Yes,
in other words, you were the hired help.
Yes, so doing that, and then as soon as I was able to start making money as a kid, so I could have some independence, I started hustling for that. I did,
Yeah. Okay.
driveways
Okay.
and all that.
What did you do to make the first money that you earned?
Oh, my. I mowed lawns for my uncle when I was 15 during the summer. It was hard, too, because that's a hard job.
Oh,
yeah, mowing lawns is hard.
Yeah, that's pushing out the ones that you ride on either.
Yeah. Okay, and so what was your first hustle?
Actually, that was probably buying and selling baseball cards at a yard sale on the side of the road, which is probably not legal. Didn't have my resale license at the time, but
Turning you in.
you know, who's going to bust a cute little kid with some baseball cards? And then from that, it was
Is
shoveling.
there a statute of limitations on this? 'Cause you better be careful.
I think so.
okay?
I was under the age
police
of
are
18. They couldn't do anything. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, but then they could put your parents in jail because, you know, they had you out on the street by yourself.
Let
Which I
me
think-
tell you right now, Pagel is the biggest heart and softest soul person that you
Yeah.
could ever, most
Yeah.
compassionate person. He couldn't break a law if he tried.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
which is, I think, why we get along so well.
Okay, so let's see. So you have siblings. Okay, you've been married
I have, yes.
and you are divorced.
I'm married and divorced. I got married very young.
How old were you?
I was 19,
Oh.
no, 20 when I got married.
Oh.
Yes. Married for 3 years and then divorced. And then I ended up in Texas after some years of going to school, first for nursing and then for a general ultrasound and then for cardiology ultrasound. And that's where I ended up, was in Texas. And
And then
Texas
you got
is
here.
when I was
Yeah.
first introduced to cannabis in that red state.
Oh,
Yes.
So, what was the quality of the cannabis in that red state, given that it is so close to Mexico and we're so concerned
Well-
about drugs flowing in?
Again, the first time I ever experienced it, I had no idea what quality was or the difference between anything. So once I understood, you know, it's better. You figure out where it's kind of coming from, but you know, it's not something you should be doing down in that red state. But
I
that's when I
see.
was introduced to it, and kind of brought me into everything, and you know.
Well, you're
Yeah.
talking about, you know, being close to the border and having it come in from Mexico down there. Well, when I started, I was in Rhode Island, and I am pretty sure that I was also smoking some stuff from Mexico.
Yes, well,
you
the
know.
highways run
Yeah.
straight from there to here. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the medical dispensaries has one of their strains named, I think it was something like DIVS 91 or something like that, and so it was something about it being, you know, divided between the two highways, you know, that come through Chicago and someplace else. I forget what it was, but yeah, you know, DMVSS 91, something like that. In any case, I'm sure I have it wrong, but yes, right. All roads lead from,
Yes.
and then everywhere else. Yeah.
And when I was younger, I thought that it all came in plastic film containers as well.
Oh, the little
because
black
that's-
ones?
Yeah. That's when
with
I
the
was
gray tops?
introduced.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That's where it was hosted. May or may not have found it in my parents' room. I don't know.
Really?
It coulda
May or may
happened.
not have.
Could have happened.
Your parents' room.
Yes.
Wow, what about, so you know, never. Yeah. So one of the things that we went through is that, you know, because my brother's 3 years older than me, and so when we were first smoking as hippies, my parents were definitely not into it, you know, at all. I don't know whether or not they knew about it. You know, I mean, all of that is lost to ancient history. But we had to have a discussion about what we were going to do, and they said that we could smoke in the apartment, and then we did, and then they changed their mind.
It's funny how parents reserve the right to change their mind retroactively.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
know, well,
like, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah, they said, you know, we didn't think it was going to be like this. You know, my memory is, and it could be completely distorted, that I don't have, you know, like, I mean, this could be like 15 stories all into one, but my memory was that we had a bunch of my brother's friends over, and, you know, everybody had, I mean, it's beautiful now because everybody looks pretty much the same as they did back then. You know, the hair and the hats are slightly different, but basically it's still the very
Basic look.
you know, it's a good look. It's not a super groomed look. I like it.
It's
In any case,
it's a comfortable
it's
look.
it's comfortable. Yes. So
Good.
there were a bunch of boys around. Okay, and me. I don't know if there were other girls around, but I remember, you know, there was one of my brother's friend Brian, who I just thought was the
So
funniest
key
guy in the
facts
world.
here: you and a bunch of boys.
Got it.
I had an older
Noted.
brother. Ask your sister. My sense is she will say, "Yeah, I remember that. You and your friends were over, and I was there." That's how it
Probably
works.
that's probably correct.
That's how it works.
My friends knew better, though. They still better know better. She's married with kids, guys.
No. My brother and I were friends. This was not. This was cannabis
Right now the ratings are going
related.
up.
This was not. I don't think. No, Brian was funny and smart. He made me laugh. In any case, So my brother lived in what was called the servants' quarters, okay, because I grew up in an old pre-war apartment, and so we had the kitchen was sort of off of the rest of the house, and so off the kitchen was a room where the servants lived, and so that was my brother's room. In any case, and so it was right where the kitchen was, and what I remember was we smoked in his room, and then we went into the kitchen, and we were known for having every flavor of Haagen-Dazs ice cream at the time, which was only chocolate, vanilla, and coffee. Okay, but it was always there.
It sounds more impressive just as we had every flavor of Haagen-Dazs.
Well, I just want you to know it was so before there were any lots of flavors. Okay, that was it. Okay, but we had them. Okay, then my mother and my husband can attest to this because he's one of the few people that really is still alive that saw my parents born. My mother had a cabinet this big, and it had every Pepperidge Farm cookie. It was like a Pepperidge Farm cookie store.
Heaven.
Okay, and then Sara Lee. Do we have Sara Lee here? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I know Sara Lee.
Brownies, orange cake with the white icing. So I think when my mother came in, what I remember was we were all draped and spooning and cutting, and there were no plates to be seen, and she was like, "This is not what I imagined." Okay, so that was just it's a long story, but in any case. So what else would you like to share about your life paths? Because again, I think it's important for people to have a sense of, you know, what is it? Is there any particular struggle that you want to share with people? Any particular place where you had this awakening? Like, given the conservative background that you came from, to have changed your life so completely. Forget about just the cannabis piece for a moment, but to move, as you said, to move from Rhode Island, people stay. And so I'm curious to know, what was it that got you to be someone who was able to break out and to make independent decisions that were...
Well, I can tell you, that decision was really difficult to make. It's scary, it's frightening. You're standing on kind of like a ledge, kind of thinking about what can happen, what can go wrong, or what could go right, or what can really become of it. And so that thing that kind of just made me take that leap was the team that I was working with, to be very honest. I knew that we had a great core team to make Reliable Bud and make our efforts really go. And if I want to talk about teamwork, my partner in crime, my work husband here, Pagel is what I get to call him.
Pagel. Paglianini.
We really, we get stuff, we get it done,
really
we
go
collaborate.
with this.
Yes.
Yes, in any case. But when did you connect with Reliable Bud?
So I connected with them because about 2.5 years ago, I had started doing some work for them, just kind of doing editing and looking at paperwork or whatnot. I am connected as a tight-knit group of friends and family. That's what we are. And so after doing a little bit with them, going to the first conference and being really introduced to the cannabis space and the industry, I was sat down and asked to become a partner and become part of the company. And I accepted, and I said yes, just as long as I saw it go into a medicinal way, because I was very concerned. I want to keep my medical background, and I want to see it help people. I don't want to just go wreck. I want to see the change happen. So that's the ultimate turning point for me that I actually made into the industry. And I did that, again, because of the team that I knew that I was walking in there with. So I felt confident.
Nice.
That's
nice.
Flattering and humbling. Very much. I came in a slightly different way because I had been a part of the cannabis community and industry for my life. My neighbor, when I was younger, introduced me to smoking in a fun way. She said, "This is going to be awesome, and you're going to have a great time, and we're going to hang out." And
so this is the person who had the movies, maybe?
What's that?
She had the movies?
No, this was this is just
Desperately Seeking Susan. We were talking about that, which may or may not have been somewhere around your house, but I'm not sure. So I'm just wondering if it was at the neighbor's house.
It was there sometimes. I mean, there were the neighbors, and after some enjoyment, a bunch of random movies got watched. That like last 3/4 of Goonies, that was
Goonies.
the Easter, or the first 3/4 of Goonies, that was the Easter egg on there.
Got watched a lot. Not the last 3/4. Don't you have to be specific which 3/4?
I know.
In any case, so your neighbor neighbor, older, younger, peer?
She was a year older.
Okay, so a peer. Okay.
Yep.
So we're not talking some 35-year-old woman
no.
bringing in 15-year-old Pagel.
No, this was like
saying, "Come here, little boy."
no. There might have been a little. Might have been a little bit of that, and I totally fell for it. She was a beautiful girl and super nice. And to this day, still have a relationship with her. We're still friends.
Oh, nice.
Good people.
Nice.
But that got me into smoking. And if you ask anybody who knew me early in my life, they would always tell you, yeah, Chris has pot. Because I always had it, it was just always around. I always wanted to be able to provide it to other people, and I'm just talking about smoking everybody up. I was the guy who came to the party, and everybody's like, "Oh, I got a 6-pack, I got this," and I'm like, "I got a bag of weed."
And where did you access your cannabis back then?
I had friends who grew at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have those relationships and helping them out, and they would help me out and supply me with some. So I had that going.
You had friends.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about you? How were you first accessing the cannabis that you were using when you were first using cannabis?
Well, I guess I'm a little bit of what people call a weed snob. And that's because I never went through those hard times where I had to scrape resin out of a bowl and smoke it, or had to find something to smoke out of, or had to find something because I didn't have it. I luckily was with somebody at the time who was already into cannabis, and so everything was just right there. And I was introduced to it, and it was given to me, and I tried it, and I'm like, wow. It is not the devil. It's actually kind of bringing me from my type A, go everywhere, go crazy personality to sit down, relax, Rhiannon, take a break. It's okay.
Interesting. Wow. I was we had some friends over last night, and one of the things that we were talking about was the word out there that cannabis has changed so dramatically in terms of the THC content. And what I believe is that it all depends on where you're getting your cannabis, because there's been really good cannabis out there for a long time. And I'm here, as a living example of somebody who has been using, really superior cannabis for decades. So I think it's how you access it and so forth.
Well, you got to remember, at the end of the day, cannabis is a plant, and the love and care that goes into the grow behind it is going to come in the flower that it produces as well. Yeah. Just like somebody can grow a tomato, somebody can grow a great tomato, so it works in the same way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kind of that craft cultivator level is where you find, I think, almost more of the premium flower or premium product that has the most care and love put into it, because it's not a mass-produced item, and it's something that they really want to make sure they're getting out to the public for good medicinal consumption.
Yeah.
You mentioned being out there. I want to share a little story of something that happened that changed my perception on what out there meant, just on a global scale. I had went through an experience in my personal life. It was my professional life at the time, where I was robbed at gunpoint. And when that happened, I had a panic attack and had to have an ambulance called. And when the EMTs came and checked me out and verified everything was all set, they made recommendations for me to follow up with my doctor and make all those proper appointments. And then the last things they said to me were, "Do you smoke?" And I looked at them and I said, "Cannabis?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, call your friends, tell them to get the biggest bag they can and come and hang out, because that's what you need right now. You need to relax and you need some friends." And so this moment now, this was in Massachusetts. I was working, and it was over in Raynham, and this was 11 years ago now. So 11 years ago, I was told this by an EMT, and it just caused that wake-up moment where I was like, you know what, when I'm telling everybody, hey, smoke, have some relaxation and everything, I'm really trying to help them in the way it's helping me, which is to self-medicate and remove some of the stresses and anxieties that I have in my life in a way that helps me process everything.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. A space where I work is in the language that we use. It's part of the education piece that I hold in a wide variety of ways. And I hear you use the word self-medicate. I hear both of you using medicate versus recreational. I see cannabis as being part of my dietary life, part of what I do that falls under anything that I believe to be something that I do that's beneficial, whether it's thinking positive thoughts or sleeping well or eating a really good diet or, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And cannabis comes in there. And so I really want to invite people. And again, it's really for all of us to be cognizant of the words that we're using. I don't hear you self-medicating. What I hear is that you had a horrific experience that could imprint you like that with PTSD. Okay? I mean, that's what happens. The brain, the surge of chemicals is phenomenal. And what you have associated with it is this whole other story, while I'm sure there's trauma still, because how can you not have that kind of experience and not have it, imprint anyway? But they gave you this other experience that imprinted so that the whole story is completely different. And what you're really saying is that there was this sort of sense of freedom, like, I'm not going to hide this anymore. So from this truly horrific experience, people reaching out to you and communicating to you in a way that was not judgmental, that was open-minded, that saw that there was a way for you to, again, take good care of yourself. It's like one of the things I love about Chris, okay? Anytime I see you, I just think to myself, when was the last time I drank water?
You're always going to stay hydrated.
You got to hydrate.
Constantly. I'm always drinking it. You'll always see water in my hand. People are probably laughing that are viewing this right now at how much I've been drinking out of this cup. It's so important.
Drink water, dear. Drink water,
so
dear.
So bad.
It's any case. So, so again, I think that I want to really offer to you, take out the self-medicate, observe yourself. Is that really what you're doing? Because within the construct of our society, self-medication has a very negative, thing. It's like, so he's making a decision to drug himself rather than you're nourishing yourself and you're taking care of yourself. Because again, let's go back to what you also always, both of you say, it's a plant.
Well, yeah.
It's a plant.
It is.
It's like cauliflower.
It's a wonderful plant.
It's a wonderful plant.
But and you know what, Joanne? I absolutely understand where you're coming from with the self-medication and things of that nature. But a lot of the reason that I actually do I use that terminology very specifically because of the fact that I believe there are some people in any situation with anything that are going to use it recreationally and may abuse anything in life, right? But the majority of people that I've met that utilize cannabis and the community partners that we've had the pleasure of interacting with and working with out there in the cannabis community, they refer to so many people as patients. And it's more of this. Who in this world does not suffer from some stresses and anxiety? And it may be because, like you're saying, we're lacking, some of our basic nutritional needs, which cannabis is one of those, something to help us. But that's what they see. They see people as having deficiencies in it and that they're able to help them. And they see them as, needing the plant.
Yes, and I understand that. And I appreciate, your what you have to say, and keep saying self-medicate, because I think that one of the most important things is for people to hear the differences and to also understand that they can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And that it really is about offering, because one of the things that I'm sensitive to, I think, around the cannabis is for decades, literally asking myself, because it was such a private thing that I did, am I an addict? Because I always shared with my doctor. I see my doctor once a year because I'm very healthy. And I always say to her, yes, I'm still using cannabis, except for the 3 years when I was in graduate school when I did not. But I said to her, I always say to her every year, and she's been my doctor for, I don't know, over 20 years. And I say, and she, does all the checks on me and everything else, and I come out incredibly healthy. But I think, and I lost my train of thought. But she also was very concerned. And one of the things that she requested was that I go to a drug group that was held within my, thing. And it was for people who were pot addicts. And I went and I sat there and I listened, because I was like, well, maybe I am, I don't know. I mean, I'm better with it than I am without. Is it a drug? All of that stuff. In any case, when I started hearing how these people were using cannabis versus the way that I was using it, they were on another planet for me. I don't know what they were doing, but it wasn't what I was doing, I mean, they were, it was their life. And it was something that was a part of my life, but it wasn't my life. I don't even think it's part of, it's my life now, even though I'm professionally involved in the cannabis world. That's still not what my relationship with the plant is. So in any case, so when I left that, I thought to myself, and then even more so recently, that this really is not unlike all of the other things that I've done to take really, really good care of my body. That's how I use it. And I don't call myself self-medicating when I don't eat sugar and I eat only fresh fruit, for instance. I don't say, oh, I'm going to go get fucked up. I made a vow with myself I'm not going to use curse words until the end of the year. I don't say to myself, oh, I'm going to go, get loaded on some mango, even though right now I'm binging on mangoes, going through like 3 a day. In any case, or let's get together and, I got some really good mangoes. Wow, it's going to really turn you on, and I'm going to, really turn you on to some really good, I don't do that.
Right.
And cannabis is the same thing. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, that is a fantastic way of looking at it, and something I hadn't considered as much. And it really is.
So have I changed your mind? Have I changed your mind? Have I changed your mind? Have I changed your mind?
Because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, me and Rhiannon, when we're working on our events, talking about things that are stressful.
Yeah, and let's move into that, okay? I think we'll leave the stress part of our conversation for another time, but yeah, go ahead.
But when we're working on those types of events, cannabis is a regular part of that for our everyday life, our process, and what we're doing there, and a combination of that and like friendship. Rhiannon is there for me during all the tough times we have, as we're working to pull everything together, as it feels like things are falling apart and slipping through your fingers. And it's a combination of things that you just need in your life that are healthy and good for you. And I think that's what you just did, is kind of opened up that association for me. It's I need friendship in my life. It's important. It's I'm not addicted to friendship. I don't self-medicate with friendship.
Exactly. Well, and because I think it's also really important, especially as you hold the health position, which I think is so important, and that is that we don't say, within the medical world, if someone has a prescription, they're not self-medicating unless they're using the prescription incorrectly.
Correct.
Or they're using a prescription that's not for them.
Right.
And, again, I think that it's also about taking, because one of my objections is that it keeps getting compared to cigarettes and alcohol, and it's not comparable.
No.
And so putting it into a context again as a part of sleeping, eating, hydrating, skincare, taking a shower, you have to do these things in order to get up and get motivated and, present yourself to the world and feel good about yourself.
Well, and let's not only just limit that to cannabis. That's also CBD. CBD is a huge player in the game too. So.
And I'm putting all of the whole plant, the whole kit and caboodle.
I got it.
The whole. As my mother would have said, the whole mishpucha. That's the Yiddish for it, mishpucha. The whole mishpucha is like the whole, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
In any case. But so I think, again, it's what has been illegal because of fear and because of misinformation And how do we then reintroduce, because we're a much more sophisticated society in terms of nutrition, in terms of how the brain works and so forth. And yes.
I think that one of the biggest things that needs to happen now that cannabis is becoming more accepted into society is everybody that has been utilizing it all this time needs to start having conversations. They need to start talking about it, because the stigma and the stereotypes that revolve around it are based on what people have seen. And what they don't see are all of the working professionals who utilize this as a part of their everyday life in a normal, regular, responsible behavior, and,
are successful. They
Exactly.
implement it into their daily lives. These are CEOs and founders of large Fortune 500 companies, if not other natures of companies, who use cannabis and utilize it, but have not had those conversations that really should have those conversations, because, cannabis and CBD both help with stress and anxiety and all those things that execs and everybody in the working field goes through.
Yes, well, and I think it's also all the other people besides the people that fall under the construct, the typical construct of what success looks like, because I think that it's also about, I'm not so sure that a lot of those people are what I would consider to be fully successful humans. And so their voices, while important because of the fame and all of that stuff, I believe that it's much more of all of us coming together and presenting. It's why I came out on Instagram recently and put pictures of myself in every decade of my life since I've been a teenager, saying, you want to know what someone who smokes cannabis looks
saw that.
like.
I liked it.
And this is it. And I do believe that while it is everything that I have done, and that includes cannabis, and it has been an extremely important part of my overall mental, physical, and health.
If you want to talk about success stories that are surrounding cannabis, I want to tell you about a friend of mine, and I'm not going to use his full name out of respect for him.
Pagel?
But we're just going to call him B, okay?
B.
And B had an alcohol issue, and it was no good for him in his life. And after he was able to move away from that, finally, through the help of cannabis, he has changed over a complete new leaf. He is now married with 2 kids to his girlfriend that he was on some kind of rocky terms when his alcohol was ruling his life, instead of allowing him to just enjoy some natural things that were going to allow him to live his best life. And he ended up having a couple of kids. He, at the end of his workday, as opposed to a lot of people who get out of work and maybe have a drink and sit down in front of the TV to de-stress, he goes, he enjoys a little bit of cannabis, and then he sits on the floor with his children and he talks to them about their day, and he plays with them and their toys, and they interact. And it's, that is what cannabis can do for people, and I mean, it's not going to do that for everybody at all.
Right.
It's
which
not
I
the
think
end.
is a really important point. So thank you for saying that. Right. We don't want to give this impression that it heals everybody of everything. It doesn't, but it is very effective for certain things. And
Well, if you
when
have a
it works,
deficiency in the
it
cannabinoid
works.
system,
Yeah.
then that can fill that need.
That's
That's
right.
not necessarily going to fill all the other ones. There may be a lot of other things in people's lives that they need to work on, but it's definitely going to fulfill that specific one, I think.
Again, it's like, eating a good diet. Red vegetables, yellow vegetables, green vegetables.
Mix it up.
Absolutely.
Water.
And sometimes
water.
it takes...
So let's, we're running out of time, which I can't believe it. This has been really fast. All right, so where do you think the cannabis world is going?
It's going to be legalized. Mark my words. 2020.
Mark her words. Okay, Chris?
I also believe we are headed towards a legal market. I do believe here in Massachusetts there are some steps that we can take now in order to make the legal market locally very successful.
Okay, what can people do? Again, we're running out of time. So let's talk because one of the things that I'm so inspired by is that there is a level of activism right now across the board, in terms of people really understanding that they have to stand up and get involved politically. It is not someone else's problem. It is not other people. So is there something that you can tell people that actions that they can take right now?
Two big things. One would be anytime there is cannabis-related law, there are elections, there are things, read up, get knowledge, get out there and vote on them and make your voices heard. And the other thing is, let's make a strong push together to get event licensing moved up and a reality. We believe that there was a slight disservice done to the local community when we set out to build up people who were in areas of economic disempowerment and build up small business within the state, but we didn't give them a permit right out of the gate. That should have been the first thing we did.
Yep. Work
And
on
so pushing for that now would be our next step, so that way we can start to facilitate. How did you refer to the market? The alternative market.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, let me just explain that. Okay, there are, as simply as I can put it, there are three markets in cannabis. There's the recreational and legal market, so we're going to put that all together. Okay, so medical and recreational, and we're just talking about Massachusetts right now. There is the black market, which is any kind of cannabis product that is brought in from someplace else. It is the stuff that people are afraid of. And it's moving all over the country, and there's routes again, it's very, very well established in any case. So that's the black market. Then there's, and I'd like to give credit to Ed Rosenthal, who was on In the Weeds. He's a guy out in California. He's a grower for decades. And he called it, and when I was listening to In the Weeds, he was talking about the alternative market. So I do want to credit him with giving me that language. The alternative market are the growers and the producers within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And there are many people who are in that category who are like the organic farmers and the farmers that go to the farmers markets that we've all come to know and love. And what I think you're referring to, and tell me whether or not I've got this right, is creating that kind of opportunity.
Correct. Yeah, these local growers and local upstart businesses, they are hungry for a way to be able to market their efforts to the public, and a way to continue to showcase what they're doing in their brand, so that way they can either attach on with somebody else or just get their locally sourced things in the hands of the people who want and need them. And that's where that event licensing and permitting is going to really open that door. And I think I speak for both Rhiannon and I when I say that you can expect to see both of us pushing a lot more for that and becoming more and more involved, and we'll be looking for everybody's support. Yeah,
absolutely. We will be out there. I do also suggest that people get involved in their local community, show up at your town hall meetings, and support anything that they ever talk about and about the cannabis in the community. You need to be there and have a voice. We get two options and times to speak during those town hall meetings, so we need to take advantage of it.
Great. Wonderful. And as you know, I support the concept of events because I think that what people want in life are experiences. And that's what you can have at an event. I know that as a medical marijuana patient, I do not really have an experience when I go and purchase cannabis. I also have found huge differences in the alternative market and the medical market in terms of what's available, consistency of product, as well as, in my personal opinion, the quality. And I really have just been amazed at the commitment of so many people who have been silently, I mean, we talk about as consumers, we've been, closeting ourselves, but I think that these incredibly talented arborists. I don't even, it's beyond. I mean, they're really doing
Skilled work.
skilled farming. It's just, it's incredible.
The knowledge that they possess and are willing to share is
It's
amazing.
staggering.
It is.
Exactly.
They're willing
Exactly.
to learn.
Absolutely. They're the conversations that take place at the events are actually the most valuable thing there,
Yep.
in my opinion. I mean,
Education, right? Educate, illuminate, illustrate, because that's how things shift. Today in the New York Times, and we'll start winding up, but today in the New York Times there was an article about legalization in New Hampshire. I was like, ooh, Rick Naya was not there. Rick Naya was not in the New York Times. New York Times, you missed the guy.
That's a letdown.
I was really shocked because I got up early this morning, and the first thing I do is I open up the front page of the New York Times to make sure that the world has not completely blown up during my sleep, okay? Because I need to know if there's another day, okay? Because I'm never quite sure right now. And there I see this article. So I go get my coffee and, pull myself up to, my iPad, and it's like, okay, where's Rick Ryan here? And I was like, he's not here. He's not here. In any case, but one of the things that one of the politicians there is quoted as saying is that we are going through a seismic shift, and it is impacting our culture in so many levels. And it's back to the more that we can share with people and say, well, if you went to your local farm and you picked, like I live near an organic farm, and I can go and I can pick vegetables, okay, and flowers. Well, if you've done that and not been afraid, then this is no different. And again, back to if you've been to, any place, and let's look at it as, again, this is farming. It's a plant. It's a plant.
Grows from the ground.
It's been around for 10,000 years. Carl Sagan says that he believes that it was the first crop ever, and it was agricultural that really split and created the path of modern humanity. Because without that, our nutrition, back to nutrition, would have continued to suffer. So, and our level of sophistication grew as a result of having to understand climate change and, dirt and rain and, all of the effects. So I think that, if we can couch it that way, rather than self-medicating. I'm not saying that.
Don't do it.
Mr.
You've won me
Pagel.
over. It's out.
Okay, good. I do like to convince people in any case, but I understand what you're saying. I really do, and I appreciate it. And there is room for many ways. And as long as people can see us talking about it, for me, that's what's most important.
Yeah, and in the end, we both are just talking about the same thing, which
Same
is
thing.
just, being healthy.
Being
Absolutely.
healthy.
Take care of yourself.
Right. And trying to help people understand that there is nothing to be afraid of here.
No.
There are so many other things. Well, first of all, I don't encourage people to be afraid at all, because, that just means that you're letting it control you. But
I know we're getting short on time, but I
Yeah.
want to give a quick plug here
Please
for
do.
the introducing new people to
Yes.
cannabis. Don't build fear when you're bringing people in. Make it as wonderful of an experience as possible. They're already terrified, and making somebody cough out or, giving them too much for them to handle at that moment, it's not good.
it's not
No.
funny.
And it's-
And
it's-
don't
funny.
laugh. And don't
Exactly.
laugh. And also, may I just add that if somebody is there and reticent, no pressure, no peer pressure, no peer pressure. It's okay. It's okay. If you don't want to, maybe your instinct is giving you really good advice. Because again, it is not for everybody. So, but yes, right, be gentle with your friends. Be accepting.
Microdosing.
Microdose. Oh, and drink a lot of water. Anything
Hydrate.
else? Rhiannon, anything that you'd like to say? You get the last word, my friend.
The last word, what to say. To wrap it up, I think I would just say that the community altogether, within the cannabis community, really, we just need to get a grip on it, get a handle on it, come together, and try to work more collaboratively together so that we can work with the lawmakers and work with everybody to make sure that the permits and all of the licensings happen the way that they should happen.
Yeah.
But again, that comes with teamwork and collaboration. So let's do it as a team.
Yep. So educate
it.
folks, get illuminated, understand if you have an interest in the cause of legalization of cannabis, there's lots of ways to reach out and get involved. Can people reach out to you guys?
All the time.
Okay, how best to get you?
To get us, you can reach out to events@reliablebud.com. That would reach the both of us. You could also find our new social media account at reliablebud_PNR. It's our joint shenanigans and promotions. And then you can find me directly at reliablebud_ChrisPott.
And you can find me at reliablebud_DOO. Do.
Do.
Just do it.
Do it.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I can't say enough about how wonderful both of these people are, how real they are, how accountable, responsible, and how much they really are here to support the positive change in our society in a positive way. And I'm so honored. So thank you so much for making the drive here and
Absolutely.
spending your time with me. And
Thank you so much for having
Thank you.
us.
Hey, it's
We
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And we'll see you guys. Bye.
Till next time.
See you
Peace
later.
out.